Hi everyone, Melanie Cossey here. I'm making this video because I had to tell you about this great movie I just came back from called The Man Who Invented Christmas. It's the fictionalized account of Charles Dickens and when he wrote A Christmas Carol in less than 6 weeks. So this movie stars Dan Stevens as Charles Dickens and Christopher Plummer as Scrooge. So this movie will definitely resonate with all the writers out there because it covers many topics that are faced by writers. So first of all, deadlines. Charles Dickens decided that he would write this book for Christmas, and he started it in October, and he had to have it printed, first of all, written, printed, illustrated, and bound, and marketed in 6 weeks. So every writer will appreciate these sorts of deadlines. Next, self-publishing. Charles Dickens tried to go to his publishers to have this book done. They weren't keen on the idea because at that time Christmas was not widely celebrated, so they figured it would be a flop. But Charles Dickens said, "That's it, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to self-publish." So this is what a lot of writers face these days. If they can't get published, they send out their queries and whatnot, and for whatever reason, they can't find a publisher. So they decide to self-publish with various degrees of success. In the movie, Charles Dickens, it depicted him taking his ideas from everything around him. He had a notebook, and he would take, when he heard names of people, he would take their names down, thinking that one day he could use that as a character name. I'm sure a lot of us do this as well. It also showed him going about in his daily life and seeing certain situations, and that would give him inspiration. So I really like that because I find I do that as well, and I'm sure most writers also do that. So once he started to have his idea, then some characters would start to come out of the woodwork and speak to him. I'm sure many writers experience this. I know I experienced this myself, where I have an idea for a book, and then a character will sort of make itself known to me. In the movie, Charles Dickens' characters would follow him around, and you would see these characters everywhere he went, and they would have a sort of dialogue with him, and he would get more and more involved with the characters. Another point in the movie was you would see Dickens talking to his friends a lot, and his friends would ask him, he tried to explain his characters and what they were doing, and his friends would ask him, well, why? What is your character's motivation? What is driving your character? What does your character want? This is something I've experienced in my life with my writer friends, is we sit and we hash out our characters' details, and perhaps my friend will come up with an idea or ask me a pertinent question that I haven't thought of before, and I go away and I think about that, and when I come back, my character is that much stronger. Also, in the movie, Dickens found one of his servants was a young girl, and he found that she gave him some inspiration because she was talking to his kids and telling them a ghost story. So he found someone that was like a kindred spirit who he felt comfortable in sharing his story with this person to get their feedback. So this is sort of like a beta reader, and this person told him that you have to. She didn't like that Tiny Tim died. She thought that was terrible. So she helped him to realize that his character needed to grow in the story and sort of save the day at the end. I hope this isn't a spoiler. I think most people have read A Christmas Carol by now. It's 150 years old. Um, Also, featured prominently in the movie, Charles Dickens was constantly interrupted. And in the most inopportune moments, when he was deep into hashing out character details, and someone would knock at the door and poof, everything would go out of his head. This is something most writers experience because we are not writing in a bubble. We are juggling family, we are juggling work, all sorts of things. The pets walk in, you name it. So this movie covered that very, very well. Let's see what else. Critics and rivals. So in the movie it depicted Charles Dickens out and about around town, and people were coming up to him and telling him his work was terrible, or pressuring him, when are you writing your next book? When is it coming out? Come on, your last 3 were failures. So this is something we writers have to deal with as well. Cutting comments and maybe watching someone that we know in real life or just watch from afar that we think they're not the best writers. How come suddenly they have all this fame and fortune? Their books are highly acclaimed and we think, well, what about us? I'm writing this book. I think it's pretty good, but it's going nowhere. So this movie also dealt quite well with that. It went into the family and how the family felt a bit neglected because Charles was, very focused and obsessed with his story. So his wife was feeling a bit neglected as well, which is something that I know many writers and their families struggle when the writer in the family is locking themselves away, writing in the middle of the night, and maybe they don't see them like they would like to. Another point that the movie brought out was the author's inner demons and how Dickens was sort of writing and putting into his characters a lot of the issues that he was dealing with in his life and trying to resolve. So this is something that, as writers, naturally comes out in our writing. When we're wrestling with a topic, we might write about that and make one of our issues an issue for our main character. And that helps us, well, first we think it's probably a good story, but that also helps us to resolve certain things as we're writing in our novels or our poetry, short stories, what have you. Another main topic of this movie is resolving your ending. Charles Dickens apparently had a lot of trouble getting to his ending. This is something I really resonate because my book, A Peculiar Curiosity, still, even though it's been picked up by a publisher, does not have a solid ending. So I found this really interesting to see how Charles Dickens resolved this, and I don't want to give this away, so I'm not going to tell you. But I found it very interesting, and I wondered how many other writers have this problem, even right up to the last moment, like happened in the movie. And then finally, at the end of the movie, we have the triumph. So I hope this isn't a spoiler, but we all know that a Christmas Carol did get published. So finally, at the end, everything comes to fruition, and Dickens gets to experience the joy of being a successful writer and seeing his project to the end. So as writers, I hope we do all get to experience this, even if it's just finishing the novel that we're writing. Maybe it'll never see a publisher, maybe it will, maybe it'll get on the bestsellers list, who knows. But just to have that final ending where you write the end and you've accomplished this great feat of writing a novel. So that's all I have to say. I really loved this movie. if you're a writer, I highly recommend seeing this movie. That's all for now. Bye, everybody.